Hello there. I'm Paul Glumaz. I'm an active political organizer with the movement of Lyndon LaRouche. And today is the second day of January in the year 2018. A world historic year is shaping up. Um, uh, 2017 was an incredible year. There's profound changes took place in the world. And now 2018 is going to follow up on those profound changes. And um, the world is not going to be what it has been at all. It's going to change dramatically. We've come to that situation. Uh, the way to best understand the world that we're currently in is to understand that there are two paradigms, two ways of thinking about the world. One sees geopolitics or a balance of power between nations or empires as the governing principle in the world, and within that principle, it's the right of the stronger to decide the fate of the weaker. And this all is the whole Darwinian survival of the fittest, and all the philosophical basis for this is we're on top, we're the strongest, we're the best, we're the exception, and we have a right to do whatever we want to the people that can't, that aren't that strong. And however, when a lesser developed part of the world begins to develop, then that's a threat, and therefore they have to be stopped, or they have to be destroyed, or they have to be defeated. And this is the source of all these wars that have been going on, starting with the Vietnam War, and especially in the latter years in the post 9/11 period, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, the war in Syria, the war in Libya. And yes, we had many thousands of troops on the ground in Syria during this war. They were training ISIS, they were training Al Qaeda, they were training Al Nusra, and the people who were fighting for Al Qaeda or ISIS or Al Nusra, they were all mercenaries, and they were interchangeable. They would move from one to the other, and we were training them all, along with the Israelis, along with the British, along with the Canadians, along with the Australians, and probably along with some of the European NATO elements as well. And the importance of this instability that was created through these terrorist operations, which were targeting Syria, and later also targeting Libya. The purpose of breaking up Saddam Hussein, the purpose of destroying Libya, the purpose of destroying Syria, is that these nations were, in one form or another, not willing to go along with um, a globalist agenda, and they were also nations that were open to economic development. They wanted to work for economic development. You can say whatever you want about Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi, but they were committed in one form or another to the economic development of their people. They were not, shall we say, complete colonial or neo-colonial uh, appendages of the global international financial system. The case of the Philippines is very instructive. Marcos was a nationalist. He was vilified. There was a color revolution against him, led by Cory Aquino. And from the time of Marcos, the overthrow of Marcos, till now, uh, the Philippines has been completely under the control of the CIA, of the financial, of the drug, increasingly the Obama crowd, until the last election when Duterte became a president. And now the nationalist tradition of Marcos is being resurrected. And you will find very few Filipinos here in the US or in any part of the world or in the Philippines who do not have high hopes and high praises for the courageous new president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. So, but that's what you're up against. And the whole idea is that if you're going to force these countries to surrender, you're going to force them to produce things at cheap labor. You're going to force them to give you the raw materials at below cost. You're going to force them to not develop, not to use the raw materials for their own development, not to become full set manufacturing countries, not to get nuclear power plants for civilian use, not to develop a space program, not to develop, period. And the way the system was set up was the U.S. industrial base was dismantled, a manufacturing base was dismantled, and it was substituted by these very much cheaper labor situations. And the idea was, why would you need to have the U.S. produce these things when these countries could produce these things cheaper? And the U.S. could be just the financial center, and the IT sector, that is the information and the administrative sector. And of course, this led to a fundamental transformation of the United States over many, many decades, to where if you don't make it into the information age, or you don't make it into this high-tech service economy, then you are a castaway, and you have no future. You are what Hillary Clinton called a basket of deplorables, because you have no future. You're just a useless eater, essentially, and you might as well, die. And we, why don't you just, take the opiates that you're being given by the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors, and get hooked on opium, and that's your life. I mean, that's the world. That's your future. That's the future of your children. Except for those few who are exceptionally gifted in IT and information and computers and what have you. Everybody else, you're just an underclass at best. And that kind of mentality and that kind of economy cannot be sustained. And the only thing that's keeping the stock market up and keeping the financial system afloat is the military-industrial complex and the projection of military power all over the world. Okay, so you have a terrorist attack in some part of the world. The U.S. comes in to help you out, but the U.S. is involved in supporting and training in another place this terrorist group. It's now fully admitted that the United States created ISIS, and yet you have all these sanctimonious people talking about our war against terrorism. It's a total contradiction. It's insane. The special report was put out a few weeks ago called National Security Strategy. And they talk about how America is the greatest thing on the planet, how we have promoted freedom all over the world, and freedom of the marketplace, and that we are against government interfering in the welfare of the people of the countries that we want to project this power over, and that we are projecting our values. Well, they're not the values of the American people. These are the values of Wall Street. These are the values of the London Financial Center, the values of George Soros, which is what? Which is the government, or the values of Paul Ryan, if you want to get into the Republican side of it. The values is the government has no right to interfere in our looting of the population of this nation, or most of all, the nations of other countries. They don't have a right to do that. And you're going to establish anti-democratic policies that our global financiers don't have democracy over your country? They don't care about democracy. They want democracy for the financiers. That's what they want. They don't care about people having the right to vote. If they don't vote for the right people, if they vote for a strong government, then they're total authoritarian. Our values. What is our values? Our values is to loot. Our values is to plunder. And the only thing holding that up right now in the world is the U.S. military. And the three major areas of concentration of crisis have a purpose: North Korea, the Middle East, and Ukraine. The United States made an agreement with the Russia that dumped communism and went into this transitional phase that Ukraine would be neutral. Ukraine would give up its nuclear weapons to Russia, and it would remain neutral. The United States and NATO reneged on that deal and organized a fascist coup against an elected president. And our values, these are the good guys. Putin is the bad guy. The people in Ukraine that didn't want to live under that, who were ethnic Russians, are the bad guys. Putin invaded Crimea. No, the people of Crimea, who are all Russian, decided they didn't want to be part of a Nazi, Russophobic, anti-Russian gang, Nazi paramilitary that we paid $5 billion, according to Victoria Nuland, to create. They didn't want to be under that, so they seceded. The Russians didn't invade Ukraine. Besides, they already had a base there. They already had Sevastopol, the major naval base of Russia. So it wasn't like the Russians had to occupy the place. I mean, they already were there. And the people, decided overwhelmingly to say, hey, we want out of here. We were never supposed to be in here in the first place. We were never part of Ukraine historically until Khrushchev decided to balance things in the Ukraine by transferring Crimea to Ukraine from Russia, from the Russian Republic, Socialist Republic, to the Ukrainian Socialist Republic. So these people are not historically Ukrainians. So they decided to leave. But this tension in Ukraine is absolutely essential because it justified the sanctions. Why do they have to have sanctions on Russia? Because Russia and China are developing the Belt and Road. The Chinese are developing Belt and Road, and there's a massive expansion of production and development going on in Asia, and all these European countries have advanced skilled populations, whether they're in Eastern Europe, Central Europe, or in Western Europe. They need jobs, and they got jobs producing to develop China, to develop Russia, to develop Eastern Europe, to develop Southeast Asia. They got jobs. The German industrial machinery has jobs. The French have jobs. In fact, the French economics minister just said, hey, we're going to have to reposition towards the Pacific, towards Asia, because we don't have an economic future otherwise. So even the French are catching on. So you got to have this constant war going on there in the middle of Ukraine that never ends. The U.S. is just sending them Javelin anti-tank weapons in order to keep it going. Why do they got to keep it going? Because if that Ukrainian thing was resolved, then it would be a totally different situation. The same with the Middle East. Why is Iran the enemy? Well, they're going to get nuclear weapons and they're going to nuke us. Yeah, right. Or they're going to nuke Europe. Okay, so we got to set up an ABM system in Europe. Why do you need an ABM system in Europe for Iran? Well, no, they don't need an ABM system for Europe and Iran. They need it to be able to do a first strike against Russia. Or we need THAAD missiles in Japan and South Korea. Oh, why do you need that? Because of North Korea has been building nuclear. We got to protect. No, you don't need to protect South Korea from nuclear attack because the North Koreans aren't going to attack South Korea with nuclear weapons. They got artillery. They could wipe out the most populated area of South Korea. So why do you need Korea? Why do you need to have an enemy, North Korea? North Korea has to be there as an enemy, as an excuse for the projection of U.S. military power. And then the projection of U.S. military power means that Japan has to keep buying our treasury bonds. And China has to keep buying our treasury bonds. Okay, you get if North Korea gives up its nuclear weapons and works with South Korea and all of that. We can't afford that. That's the end of our system. So this is why the military thing is so $7 trillion we're spending in the Middle East in the military, from the beginning of the Iraq War, from the 9/11. $7 trillion we spent of U.S. taxpayers' dollars. $7 trillion. Why? Because that's what's holding up Wall Street. That's what's holding up the City of London. That's what's holding up our system. Our system is being held up by that. Our system, our values, American values. Or what right. American values. Go to West Virginia. Go to the Midwest and see what's happening to the population. Here in Seattle, we got a tech boom going on. It's a financial boom and a tech boom. The same in San Francisco. But you don't have that in the Midwest. You don't have that east of the Cascades. Okay? You have hell. Okay? But you don't. So these are American values, right? Well, let me tell you something. That's coming to an end. The Russians are developing. China's developing. Massive development is now starting to take place around the Belt and Road. And you can't stop it. That is now the directionality of the world. It wasn't the directionality before, but now it is. And let me tell you how rapid this is. The Chinese have developed a very advanced system of building high-speed rails. And so have the Europeans, and so have the Japanese. And let me tell you something. This stuff is growing fast. And it's being spread to Africa. It's about to be spread to Latin America. And it's going to grow. This economic development, and the Chinese are pushing hard for fusion power. They're making major breakthroughs in fusion energy. And they're making major breakthroughs in nuclear technology. And they're moving forward fast. And they have an entire generation of people who are going to supersede whatever we have at Microsoft 10, 15 years from now. You talk about the high-tech sector. Their high-tech sector, their IT sector is not just information. It's not just how to keep the banks going by juggling more balls, being able to compute and juggle more balls, and more trading, more balls. It's actually connected to the physical economy. Now, you see this in the U.S. You see the discrepancy. We had this wholly fake boondoggle out here to supposedly increase the speed of some dilapidated rail in Washington State. It's a big showcase. I don't know how much, $500 million. I don't know what they paid for it. And the mayor of Lakewood said, hey, it's going to crash. It's not, it might crash. It's going to crash. You have these curves and on that bridge. No self-respecting engineer in the universe would have allowed you to run a train at any kind of speed over 30 miles an hour on that track. You would have had to create a new track, and that's expensive, and we can't do that. We got to cut budgets. So what do you have? You have this catastrophe. It's totally insane. Everyone knew it was going to happen. But nobody's willing to say it except some mayor of Lakewood, maybe a few other people. And it happened. It's bullshit. That's the problem. And this strategic security strategy thing is a pack of bullshit. Yeah, we got to protect the country. Yeah, from drug traffickers, from crime, from what they call non-state actors. But who are those non-state actors? They are part of the Wall Street system. The drug traffic is part of the Wall Street system. The non-state actors, ISIS, that's part of, we created them. That's part of our system. Oh yeah, we got to defend our country against them. Of course. Of course you have to defend your country against them. But you also created it. The people writing the report created the thing that they're talking about defending ourselves from. And then the other part of the report says we can't have a strong nation without economic security, without having strong infrastructure. Well, yeah, you're not going to be able to get any infrastructure. Forget it. Wall Street is not going to allow you to have infrastructure. The Federal Reserve is not going to allow you to have infrastructure. Why? Because it's expensive. Trump is going to be giving a speech on this at the State of the Union on January 30th, 28 days from now, 4 weeks from now. He's going to unveil the infrastructure plan. It ain't going to work. It's not even a private-public partnership. He's talking about $250 billion for this project and that project and this project. It's not going to work. You need $5-10 trillion worth of economic activity. And you're not going to fund it through Wall Street. If you think you're going to fund it through Wall Street, you're not going to fund it by the government going deeper into debt. I mean, it's better that they do that than private-public partnerships, but that's not going to work either. And do you have a master plan for the development of the country? So now you have a situation. Now, what are corporations today? Corporations are not what they used to be. Corporations are the large transnational corporations and the financial institutions believe that their rights supersede the rights of a nation. They have a right to do whatever they want to a nation. And if you don't go along with them, well, then you're going to have terrorism and you're going to have regime changes and you're going to have all of that. Well, guess what? China has corporations too. They're state corporations. And some of them are private corporations. But they're not run that way. They have a specific purpose. They have banks too. They have some of the largest banks in the world. Probably the largest banks in the world. Among the largest banks in the world. But their purpose is to build stuff. They have the Export-Import Bank. They have the Agricultural Bank, the People's Bank of China. But their job is to build stuff. That's why they're there. They're there to create capital to build things. Oh, that's not right. That's communism. That's dictatorship. They're building, and they didn't just move 700 million people out of poverty. They're saying they want to move the entire planet out of poverty by the year 2050. The entire planet. How do they do that? By hard work. Building, science, technology, breakthroughs, transforming the productive powers. This is LaRouche. This is core LaRouche policies going back to the 70s. This is China. And now it's catching on in other countries. And this is the future. And all this other stuff of all these games with terrorism and drug trafficking and divide and conquer and set the Sunnis against the Shias, Israel against the Arabs, Israel against the Palestinians. Now we're all going to confront Iran. All of that is pure garbage because it's not going to work. Geopolitics is going to fail in the year 2018 because there's something different going on, which is science, technology, industrial transformation, infrastructural transformation, and that is what's going to run the world. And the United States has got its head up its you-know-what huge. And all the leaders in Congress have their head up their you-know-what, and all the economists have their head up their you-know-what. But they are starting to realize that it isn't going to work. The right-wingers of the National Review are realizing it isn't going to work. The left-wingers, the progressives, are realizing it's not going to work. Now is the time for the LaRouche program. Now is the time for Glass-Steagall, a credit system, an infrastructure drive, and a scientific driver with the space program and fusion power. Now is the time to do it. Now is the time. And that is the message. That is what we have to get out to these people, because all this other stuff isn't going to cut it. You're not going to keep Wall Street alive through the military anymore. You're not going to keep Wall Street alive and the city of London alive by terrorism, by drug trafficking, by screwing everybody, by getting rid of entitlements as, or this corporate tax cut, or as Paul Ryan wants to get rid of all the entitlements so he can give more money to Wall Street. That's not going to cut it anymore. It's not going to work. And I think a lot of people at the top are beginning to realize that. But what policy are they going to come up with? They don't have a policy yet. We have a policy. The LaRouche movement has a policy. And that's the whole point.